people. And then a great trick in town meeting is to say, I have a question for town council. Why would you be so ridiculous as to yada yada? In other words, it's not a question. It's a big editorial about something that they're framing as a question. So we don't allow that either. And then probably the most important thing, as intimidating, as difficult as the rules and the structure can seem, if you want to do something and you don't know how, go to the microphone and say, Mr. Moderator, can I, or how would I, and I'll answer you and help you out as best I can. So we get into the meeting. We've got this warrant, which is the list of all the things that we need to address. And here's how we start to go through it. We get up and we salute the flag, and occasionally we thank outgoing selectmen, outgoing elected officials, and acknowledge a few people for things, a couple of little niceties, very brief niceties. And then we move on to addressing the warrant. And so I will read Article 1 of the warrant. And then I will ask for a motion. And this is really important to understand. An article is not a motion. For example, to go back to our the example that I used before, the article would read, to see if the town will vote to appropriate and or transfer from available funds a sum of money to pay for eelgrass transplanting, bird monitoring, town beach as required by federal state permits, blah, 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 blah. But in order for anything to happen under that article, that asks, will a town vote to appropriate a sum of money? So in order for us to do anything under that article, someone has to fill in the details. How much money? Where is it going to come from? So a possible motion under that article would be, I move the town appropriate $10,000, an amount, from taxation, a source for eelgrass transplanting and bird monitoring at Town Beach. Now, usually the motions are not going to affect you. The motions to make things work, I try to make sure I know who's going to make the motion and exactly what they're going to say for every article at town meeting. But a lot of times people are confused where they see one thing in the warrant and then the motion is something different, and they don't understand the difference. A warrant article defines a topic and a set of choices. The motion is a proposed action, a choice of one or more of one of those choices. So it is a sum of money in that article. So you can make a motion for $5 million for eelgrass transplanting, and it would be legal under this article. Be unlikely to pass, but it would be legal. So an article defines a topic. A motion proposes a specific action on that topic. So we can have a couple of different kinds of motions. An affirmative main motion, which says, yeah, let's do something about this topic. We're going to deal with this issue of planting eelgrass. Yeah, let's spend $10,000 from taxation. So that's an affirmative main motion. We could also have a negative main motion where someone would, and that means we don't want to do anything about this. And a lot of times by prior arrangement, it may happen that between the time this article went on the warrant and the time town meeting comes around, the harbor master decided we don't really need this money. He'll come to the microphone and say, I move to pass over Article 25. What that means is, let's not do anything about this. And usually the whole meeting goes, yeah, let's pass over this and get on to the next one. Everybody votes that unanimously, and we're on to the next thing. That would be a negative main motion, or a motion to pass over. Does that make sense? Is that too much boring detail? Okay, good. So continuing to deal with an article. So I've read Article 1. I said I've asked for a motion from, and usually we'll ask for a motion if it's a financial article. The Finance Committee will make the motion. A financial article that the Finance Committee recommends, they will make the motion. An article sponsored by a town entity, a representative of that town entity will make the motion. An article that was put on the warrant by petition, the petitioner will make the motion. So we get a motion, we get a second. There are a few people up in front who, I believe the high point of their year is to say second to all the motions that come before town meeting. Then we ask the Finance Committee for their recommendation. And the Finance Committee usually says Finance Committee recommends or Finance Committee does not recommend. And I believe this year we varied some with how much text we put into the Finance Committee recommendation. For a long time, we used to just hear recommends, does not recommend. And then there was thinking that, well, gosh, we'd like to know more about what the Finance Committee thinks. Why did they recommend? Why did they not recommend? And so when Mr. Schmidt was chairman of the Finance Committee, he used to give us very useful little summaries of the discussion among the Finance Committee. He would say, those in favor thought this, those opposed thought that. At this point, I believe the Finance Committee is going to make recommendations that say recommended by a 6-3 margin. So you know, well, 6 Finance Committee members voted for it, but 3 voted against it. And then we can certainly find out the reasons for it when we get down to discussion. So we get a Finance Committee recommendation, and then I say, is there any discussion? Sometimes there's no discussion. And again, everybody smiles, we vote, and we move on to the next thing. But discussion can take a few different forms. The presentations that I mentioned earlier, usually if it's a complex issue and someone has made a prior arrangement with me, their presentation comes first. We usually give the floor to whoever sponsored the article first so that they can lay out their case. And then after that, general discussion ensues. So then anyone who wants to speak goes to a microphone. There are 2 microphones kind of halfway back through the auditorium. People walk to the microphones and they start to form a line. And I do my best to remember who got where first. Occasionally I have to ask for help, but usually I'm pretty good. And the people speak in order. And again, they're subject to that 5-minute time limit. They can ask questions of anyone that they want to. And as soon as they're finished, we're on to the next person, and then we're on to the next person, and so on. In the course of that discussion, people can make other motions. So say, when we were back here, so if the motion on the meeting floor is, I move the town appropriate $10,000 from taxation for eelgrass transplanting and bird monitoring of Town Beach. Well, someone could get up and amend that, and they could say, I move we amend the 10,000 to 9,000. Okay, now we're dealing with something completely different. Now we're going to stop talking about whether we want to spend money on eelgrass, period. The only thing we're going to discuss is, do we want to change the number 10,000 to 9,000? And we discuss that. When that discussion is finished, we'll vote on that. When we vote on that, then we're back to